Ich bin Dr. Dania Schumann und ich heiße dich ganz herzlich willkommen zu The Science of Life, dem Podcast, der sich mit Themen aus der Ernährungswissenschaft, dem Ayurveda, Yoga, aus der Psychologie und Persönlichkeitsentwicklung beschäftigt. Lass uns gemeinsam unsere Fragen ans Leben mit Verstand, Herz und Humor betrachten. Hello and welcome to another podcast episode of The Science of Life. This episode is going to be in English as I interviewed my teacher Sadhana. And Sadhana is trained as a Hatha Yoga instructor and meditation teacher, and she has nearly 40 years experience. Her trainings in yoga included Satyananda Yoga, Siddha Yoga, Iyengar Yoga, and also different styles of yoga as a therapy. And she has specialized in yoga for health and yoga as a therapy. And she's registered as a yoga teacher with the Yoga Alliance. And with her husband, Keval, she is leading a yoga school named Shantarasa Yoga School, and they offer a lot of trainings on yoga and especially yoga philosophy. In this interview, I talked to Sadhana about yoga as a therapy, and especially what is different from our perception of a Western therapeutical approach. We also talk about how yoga can alter the experience of yourself and what Chikitsa, which is the Sanskrit word for therapy, means in the context of yoga. We talk about why Yoga Chikitsa does not only look at the symptoms but the individual mind and body, and how Ayurveda and Yoga Chikitsa are interrelated. And there's one point that is really important. It's about why not all yoga practices are suitable for everyone. And we also clarify if yoga is the path for anyone and why yoga is an individual path if we choose to take it, and how we can still serve people in a group setting though. And there's one thing that's really special about Sadhana's yoga lessons, and this is the creation of energy through yoga practice. And she has a special way of teaching in a way that you create this energy and use it with your body instead of wasting it. And we also talk further about the Gunas Tamas, Sattva and Rajas and what role they play in the phases of a yoga class. So without further ado, I welcome my teacher Sadhana on The Science of Life. Hi Sadhana, I'm really happy that you're here, and the topic we're talking today about will be yoga as therapy. And before we get into this, I would like you to introduce you yourself and tell a little bit about your path and how you did start practicing yoga.
Cool. So that's going back some time. So the name I live by is Sadhana, and that's a name that my initial teacher gifted me with, and the name itself has been an instruction to dedicate life in a certain way. So it was a great gift to receive, and that's how I started the practice, through that gift. I came from a professional career in dance and training in art, and found yoga accidentally. And in finding it, it's become the central focus of the last more than 40 years of my life. Because what I found in it was a map for living. And that's a priceless thing to receive.
Yes, very beautiful. And so you developed your own personal practice first, I guess, over several years. And what did you, or when was the point where you see that you could use yoga as a therapy, or maybe used yoga as a therapy for yourself?
I think yoga is a therapy in that sense of the word, in that it corrects the afflictions in the human condition. So in the larger sense of what can be therapeutic to a mind that might be trapped in habits of response and feeling and confusion, or a body that reflects that, yoga is a therapy, if we use the word therapy. But it's more than that also. It's a transformational process. So whether somebody is seeking to know very deeply the purpose of a life, or whether someone is seeking recovery from a life that's perhaps been difficult, the path would be similar. The genuine seeker might take it deeper further under the guidance of a good teacher. The person who's seeking recovery would arrive at the same place, but the journey might be a bit slower, because the recovery process requires a slightly different process, a slightly different approach in practice.
So how did you use yoga as a therapy for yourself?
I don't think I was aware that I was using it as a therapy. I think for me, and I know I'm not unique in this, because we meet so many people all around the world where there's this essential question that people either articulate or don't articulate. And it's something that they're seeking an answer for, regardless of whether it's spoken out or even truly felt and understood. And I feel that the majority of people are seeking a life that has a meaning, that it has a rhyme and a reason, and it's not just a random act. And it's when it has that meaning that they can direct their goodness toward something. When it has no meaning, it's very hard to find anything to anchor your goodness to in our present world. So I don't think I was looking for yoga as a therapy, but I think I found it, or it found me, as a way to turn my life on the path I'd been seeking since being a very small child.
What is your aim in yoga then, and what is your aim when you use yoga as a therapy, when you're working with patients?
Right. So if I'm working with somebody who has an illness or a disturbance in their life that they're trying to find a way to heal, then the approach would be gentle, and it would start with perhaps giving some relief at that level of their life they're wanting that relief, because then that's encouragement for them to feel the effect that yoga can have in life in general, not just specifically for something they're looking to heal. It depends on the inquiry or the need of the person. Because usually Yoga Chikitsa is what I prefer to call it. When somebody comes, they have a purpose and a reason. So I first need to discover what is that purpose, what is that reason. If it's illness, then we might start with the physical body. But we'll also come to understand how that person's mind operates, how perhaps the way they think, the way they desire, the way they respond to certain life situations perpetuates the experience even at the physical level. So we try to establish that understanding that these different areas of ourselves are always connected. So that's part of the therapy, in a sense, that they start to think of themselves or experience themselves as a whole person, not just a person with a problem. Then there's the other kind of person who might still come for Yoga Chikitsa because they want to work one-on-one with somebody. They don't want to be in a group situation. And their question might be, I've heard that yoga can help a person discover themselves, for example. And they might have been struggling with that level of themselves, that who am I? My identity doesn't feel real. And so if that is the question, then we wouldn't be starting from a place of illness. We'd be starting from a place of genuine life inquiry. So the path would be different for that person. So it's very person-centered in that relationship in Yoga Chikitsa. And the person could come from either or even another set of circumstances that's brought them to try this out, see how this works. Does that answer the question? I'm not sure.
Yes. And speaking in that sense, how would you describe yoga as a therapy being different from the therapies we are seeing today in like modern medicine or physiotherapy, or even in a sense of yoga as a therapy from the anatomical structures or from that perspective?
Right. There's a tendency in our medicines and health modalities, not all, but many, to look at symptoms and try and correct symptomology. And the tendency when we look at symptoms is that so much energy goes towards what is wrong or what is not functional, that thing seems to amplify. Yoga Chikitsa in its truer sense doesn't work like that. It's not looking at the symptoms so much. It immediately will get an overall picture. How does this person's body function? How does this person's mind function? How does this person's life work? And then you get a sense of who is this person behind all that at the personality level, and how can we facilitate an effective change that will correct their living, bring balance to their living, bring joy to their living at all of those levels, instead of disturbance or difficulty or pain or conflict, whatever it is they might be experiencing. So it tends to go right to the root, not of the problem, but right to the root and source of that person themselves. Who are they, and do they have a connection with that?
That's so beautiful. And yeah, I think this is what is mostly lacking today in society, but many people asking these questions, but maybe they're looking for answers in the wrong places, or maybe places that are not suiting them. And I would also have to have your opinion about Ayurveda when it comes to yoga as a therapy or yoga chikitsa. How does that come into play?
These are two sciences of living and human transformation that come from the same source, the same culture, the same body of knowledge and wisdom has informed both these paths. So they're completely congruent. In some ways you could say they're cousins or brothers and sisters. Yoga Chikitsa has its own medicine pathways. It has its own therapeutic applications. They're not so easily accessed for us in European or Western countries. Ayurveda, like yoga, has become more accessible. And the Ayurvedic medicine pathways are identical in many ways to the yogic medicine pathways. So Ayurveda offers a phenomenal understanding of the human being, the way the physical body is structured, the way the mental body is structured, the relationship that is essential with essential being or self in the higher sense to affect health. Health isn't about the release of disease, but about establishment in essential being to allow disease to reduce or to disappear. Yoga has the same understanding, so they're tremendously complementary.
So what I found really encouraging for me is to see my healing path as a very individual path. And how would you say can Ayurveda maybe help a person to facilitate seeing their own path, or that there are different methods for everyone?
Right. So Ayurveda would view this in terms of constitution. As you know, the constitution of the physical, the combination of the Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and the constitution of the mind. If there's disturbance, there'll be Tamas or Rajas affecting the mental dosh, and the mental dosh needs to be brought to Sattva to calm things down. So Ayurveda would recognize how that individual operates within that map, and that gives the individual a greater degree of self-understanding. So that's why I have a need for this, or that's why I feel attracted to this, or that's why I have a craving for this, and it causes imbalance. So it helps them to understand themselves, not just physically in terms of diet and lifestyle, but also mentally in the terms of the way they think, the way they absorb information, the things that they aspire towards across the whole spectrum of the human life. So Ayurveda is beautiful in that way. It gives a person self-understanding and self-knowledge. Yoga also does that. We have to come to that place of understanding ourselves through self-inquiry. But yoga also invites us to go a little further than that, and so does Ayurveda, but yoga specifically focuses on this, is how do I then turn my innate tendencies or my innate gifts into a dharma, into something that is my service. So people feel more fulfilled when they feel their life is of benefit to others than when their life is just lived in isolation and is all about fulfilling their own personal needs.
What I found to be mind-blowing, or what has changed my yoga practice a lot, was when I came to know that not all the different yoga practices are made to be practiced by me. I mean, we get this variety of different pranayams and breathing exercises and asana, like body postures. And what I find to be really helpful is the way you teach it, in a way of we have this variety of practices, and this might be good for this and this, but it might not be good for a specific person. And what I'm also wondering is the yoga path for everyone, do you think?
Well, first you made a beautiful comment, and I'd like to extend that a little bit. Yes, not all practices would be suitable for all people or for an individual. And if we step back in time and look at how yoga was taught, it was more often teacher to student directly, and the teacher's capacity was such that they could see how that particular person functioned at all the levels we've described earlier. And they would get a very clear sense of what is most beneficial to bring this person first into balance, but then into a place of greater awareness. And so the practices that would be given to assist that particular person to reach, first of all, the expression of health in sadhana, in taking on the spiritual path, and secondly, reaching their liberation potential. So it might be that the student wasn't given any asana. The student might have been given some cleansing practices to purify the body a little, but they might have been given some kind of work, karma yoga, to tone down the tendencies of the ego and the mind and the personality, to then receive practices further down the track in a better way. So that sometimes if those practices were given too soon, they wouldn't have the right effect if the mind wasn't already calmed and centered. The mental energy wasn't brought to receive it in the right way. So it's like preparation. It's like drying out a damp log. That drying of the damp log is symbolic of, let's bring the mind to the place where it's ready to receive the teachings. Let's bring the body to the place where the practices will be beneficial and not non-beneficial. Today what we see is that there's practice in group context, and it's expected that everybody in that group, be it 10 people or 50 people or 100 people or more, are going to receive benefit, but it's not always the case because everyone in that room has a different need. So what you said is really true. How do we manage to do that now when it is largely taught in group context? That's a whole different set of training. That means we have to find something that in general benefits all people. So I would say that in general, most teachers who are trained to teach yoga today are trained to deliver something that's very generic. The training usually doesn't go deep enough to meet individual needs, and it's quite difficult for new teachers to meet individual needs in a group context. Also, what we find in the generic situation of a group is that yoga doesn't have the opportunity to work as it can, because it works more powerfully at that individual level. Giving that person the type of practice that best suits them now. But that doesn't mean that won't change.
And I think that's something really special about your classes, because I think I also came from a point, I think we're really impatient, we want to get things fast, we want to achieve a goal or something. And when I first got into your class, it was the first time I really experienced what it's like when you don't lose energy, but you create energy. And that's something really special. And still sometimes I ask myself, how can I cater to all people that are in my class? And is a group setting really a good thing? But then I see people also benefiting from it. And I'm really happy that you taught me a way to create balance in classes, that you teach to a group. Maybe you can get a bit more into this, how to create that balance within a class.
Mm-hmm. So that's something we try to offer people who train to teach, is how can I meet all of those needs in a way that doesn't disturb anybody. So we actually use the understanding of the gunas, the tamas, rajas, sattva. And so if a class meets tamas first, some people need to be drawn into that relaxation energetic first before they begin their practice. So we start with a form of relaxation practice and breathing. So that some people are already in tamas, but it's a very heavy tamas. So we need to lift them to a more sattvic expression of the tamas. So the first phase of the class refines the tamas energy and lets everybody arrive there. So there's relaxation in the body, there's relaxation in the breath, there's relaxation in the mind. Then we take the practice deeper. After that phase of the class, we then move into moving energy, clearing the channels, aligning the body, moving a little transformational heat from within the cells. We don't need the external heat, we need the internal. So we want to warm the cells up, warm the various systems of the body up a little to facilitate transformation at the physical level, transformation at the mental level. And that occurs in what we call the rajasic phase of the sequence. So that will be standing postures and back bends, postures and asanas that allow energy to begin to move more powerfully in the subtle channels and physical channels. Then at the end of the class, we bring people down into a calmer phase where they spend a little longer inside the asanas, find the stillness phase inside the asana, and there arrive at sattva, deeply calm, deeply present, deeply aware and still and peaceful. And so by the end of the class, they feel moved. Their state has changed. And at the same time, sometimes what happens for people is certain tendencies and traits change because of the state change and the way at which they've arrived at that place. So you can guide a class that enables everyone to work with themselves where they are and to work intelligently with the body-mind relationship, to pull the force and ambition out of the practice and try to meet themselves more honestly in the practice.
Yeah, and it's something you can really feel, and it's great to experience that and to really settle the mind and get the benefit from such a class. And the other question I had was if the yoga path you think is for everyone.
Yes. Well, being a 24/7 person in terms of my passion and love for this path, I would have to say yes, right? Because we all want to share what we love and value with everybody else. But is everybody ready? That's perhaps the question. And some people are just not ready yet to look. And yoga is always about looking. It's about looking to have something revealed. So if we're not ready, it might not just be the right time. But yes, I would say it's for every single body, every single mind and consciousness calls us to that.
Beautiful. I have a question for you in the end, and I would like to know what is your Dharma or your purpose in life?
Number one, I feel it's to achieve what a human life is for. And, I can say genuinely and honestly that the goal of the yogic path sits very strongly in my mind and heart. And that is to liberate this being as much as possible. But my Dharma, even more than that, is to assist others to find that upliftment. Because at this stage, after having lived yoga in a very committed way for a long time, you get to a place where you really feel people's pain. And it hurts. It hurts to feel other people in pain. So the Dharma is also to offer the path and the practice in such a way that people can receive it and bring it into their own lives and uplift themselves.
Beautiful. And I can assure you, you're fulfilling your Dharma in a wonderful way, and I'm really thankful to have you as my teacher. And thank you so much for this interview, and I hope that this is something a lot of people can hear and really draw from it, because to me, whenever I listen to your teachings or what you say comes from your heart, and I hope this way many people can just benefit from your words. And thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here.
I really hope that you could take something away from this episode and this interview. I hope that it could give you inspiration for your own yoga practice, or maybe also for you being a yoga teacher. And I would be really happy if you would connect with me on Facebook or Instagram at Dania Schumann, or on Facebook at Dr. Dania Schumann. Please leave a comment if you like. Tell me what you liked about this episode. Please share your thoughts on it, and I would be really happy to connect with you. You can also subscribe to my newsletter, which you can find on my website, which is daniaschumann.com. And I also put into the show notes where you can find Sadhana, where you connect with Shantarasa Yoga School. I wish you all the best. Much love and namaste.